Secret Diary. I recorded an entire episode before this and the microphone wasn't on. So forgive me for being a little bit disoriented and just overall a little cranky. I was on a bit of a hiatus. I was facing displacement. My store was closed after we did a march on the boss, but the reason for closing was cited as financial reasons, of course, never the union behavior. So that was a little bit of a hiatus for me. We had to go into a lot of work with effects bargaining and just trying to keep my sanity, which is perfect on topic for today's episode, which is, confession. I'm struggling mentally. Welcome to Secret Diary, a podcast dedicated to discussing our experiences of the modern work environment across various sectors. Join me as I dive into an insightful analysis and first-hand accounts of industry dynamics, where I share my goal to empower you to participate in shaping inclusive and progressive workplace cultures. To visit that one around a little bit, it seems, forgive me for the people who are watching the video, but for some reason, my webcam never focuses and it drives me insane. So I twisted that around a bit to get a slight different tang to today's episode. So the last time we spoke, I gave you a brief summary into the baby that birthed the idea of Secret Diary. Since then, I've carefully calculated each and every decision you've made to be summoned to this week's episode topic: how to flow through mental barriers of organizing, and how to swim your way through life void of existentialism and delirium. That's not the real name. It could have been, but, I'm your host, Ari Ayala, labor organizer, student, New York-based mindfulness advocate, and today we're going to talk about the F word: feelings. It's gross, I know. I too grow uncomfortable sharing vulnerabilities with my closest allies and friends, but not to the matrix escapism and digital archive that is, the internet. Involuntarily, it will exist in long after our existence. Never feeling as meaningful as that one vulnerable moment you shared with a friend that, when you were being very, very desperate, right? Because why would we ever willingly share these plagued thoughts with anyone close to us, when we have the warmth of our overheating laptops and phones? I'm joking only partially, because there's some definite hard feelings I get about sharing every inch of our lives through social media and Snapchat throwbacks. Listen, with reform, with organizing, and mobilizing the people close to you to become advocates for the very real systemic injustices we continue to face, whether it be here in America or my extended family and friends in different countries and regions, it can leave so much room to feel overwhelmed, uncomfortable, and worst of all, alienated. I don't know. I think me not having eaten breakfast and having a headache is a little bit worse than what I'm reading through right now, but I digress. I felt all of these things, and I still have moments where I self-isolate, but I want to help you through it. For so long, I felt like mental health, sharing things we struggle with, was this secret hidden in the back of my throat, whether it be after we doing an action for the union or after I inoculated a coworker, but also just day to day, getting home, working a customer facing role, feeling like I need to be mute for the rest of the day, or, just feeling overwhelmed by interpersonal things. And, but in this example, feeling a surge of anxiety wash away after we do an action, and seeing my coworkers, kind of feel anxiety, but having to counteract it with optimism. It's a sticky feeling, because as an organizer, you have to counsel the people around you through the very same insecurities and anxieties that you hold, but you've ultimately overcome. It's tough work. It's mental and physical. So I want to avoid myself of the fear of being honest, because while I love creating the difference between someone feeling replaceable and unhelpful at work to feeling empowered and secure in their work environment, educating them on their worker rights, encouraging them to do workshops and develop these skills. And also, just generally, I try to be a fountain of emotional and physical support to the people in my life. I strongly believe that we as humans in nature were meant to be in community and smaller interpersonal relationships. My roommate Vaughn, who's studying to be a psychedelic sex therapist, once told me the best thing you can do for your clients is to be supportive and to encourage behavior positively and be a safe, non judgmental ear. But when it comes to practicing and taking steps into self care and mindfulness, as much as I want to be there for others, as much as I'm sure, you struggle to be there for yourself, the first step is meeting your own needs. So, how do I do that? How do I meet my own needs so that I can be a good leader and a good organizer and a good friend and a good family member, a good partner? And kind of bridges across like a bunch of different roles you take up in life. But the main role should be to be yourself. It's not as easy, as writing a to-do list and being on your way. It requires an intentional effort to make sure that you're not putting the weight of someone else's actions or behaviors onto you. So here's some of the best practices that I use to check in with myself when the work gets the best of me. I don't know how many times it takes me weeks, like actual weeks, before I realize I'm going from action to action, social event to working to studying, before realizing like I didn't schedule any time to self-reflect and relax with myself the entire week. So in order to stay on track and give you effective advice and breakdowns, I'm going to break it into 5 of my favorite self-care/mindfulness practices, most of which are a result of 6 months in therapy, lots and lots of wellness reading, amazing podcasts like Hidden Brain and Science Versus. Those are just like some of the top of my head, and YouTubers like Hitomi, and lastly, from my unique and personal journey through life. I'm currently living through one of the most demanding times I've ever felt. Like the brunt of adulthood after a not so typical upbringing. So I want to preface this by saying like I do not consume media without a level of discernment and curiosity, and I encourage you to use your own media literacy when trying to take advice from others on how to cope with the tumultuous and beautiful issues that we deal with in this world. Listen to your body and how it reacts, and try to ease into any new additions in your life. All right. I'm doing this so that it focuses again, so I'm so sorry if it's like annoying for you. It's just as annoying for me. Let's jump in. The first mindfulness practice I ever took up was self-reflecting. I'm a huge overthinker, and when I first moved out on my own, I didn't have any idea of what a daily routine and schedule would look like, let alone how I would balance my newly served plate as a full-time worker, student, self-reliant 18-year-old. So after some very bleak and isolating 6 months or so, I read a few self-help books, like Atomic Habits, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was working through a CPTSD workbook that I never finished. And I was just like growing a bit more self-aware, but I was still being avoidant of my emotions. And it wasn't until I made like a strong effort to journal and really consider the environment change I had to come out of and what my new environment could be, which was whatever I wanted it to be, really. And that's when I started being able to slowly introduce routine and structure back into my life. During this period of time, I was adjusting to a big lifestyle change, and I hadn't really stopped to work through all my feelings. I didn't have any close friends. Back home, I felt like comfortable opening up to them, and like I had just abandoned my support system. So I had no idea. I had no friends in this really big city. So I turned to writing. Like my biggest joy and love outside of social justice and meeting new people was writing, and I was too anxious to go out and make friends. And I didn't really have like that network anyway. Like not a lot of people move out that young, especially not into like a big urban city. So I was a little isolating. Writing was my saving my sanity, and I was like, let me keep a diary and let me like actually write down how overwhelmed I feel. And you know, it felt like a better check in. Like a small tip though is like when I was starting to journal, is just like to write out like the life you want to have. I felt like I really, because I struggled to open up, like I didn't really know how to like effectively reflect and how to just like write about what I was going through. I was just not able to like tantalize it for myself. So I really suggest like just trying to materialize the good habits and feelings you want to uphold. And so it's nice to ease into it when you're breaking it down, because then you can be like, how do I feel right now? And what are small steps I can take to be in this manifested life? I really do believe in the power of manifestation and speaking those ideas into existence, making it all the more likely to happen for you, because you're taking conscious steps to consider the end goals you have for yourself and your life. The second practice I was able to establish as a result of being more self aware and reflective was creating a consistent routine for myself. Habits, I believe, though not like 100% sure, this is like some really shitty, like not cross reference, but like random speculation and like what I remember reading through and kind of briefly looking this up. It takes like 21 days for a habit to form and takes like 30 or 60 for one to break. So, you know, don't beat yourself up if it takes longer. I'm sure these studies don't account for like various different circumstances that we find ourselves in. Perhaps to cite the very disillusioned and staggering reality that the average American spends a little bit more than 1/3 of their life working, which is like disgusting and gross. And why? So, reeling back in, when you make habits for yourself and you can build them into a routine that can feel like a neutral and regulating self care ritual, as I did, I tried to break down it into steps. So, step one feels more like an analysis. Like, when do you feel your best? How can you build a good routine if you don't know, like, how you feel like you're most like yourself? So, for me, I need like 8 hours of sleep to feel 100%. So at the very least, when I'm sitting down and scheduling out my week, I make sure I have at least like an hour before I go to bed. I have like an evening routine. I'll like move my pillows around. I'll like create my like favorite little like hut of sleep, my little cave. Then I kind of like move around my room. I kind of tidy up a little bit. I'll go to the bathroom, do my vitamins, brush my teeth, do my skincare, brush my hair. Like, it just feels good. It just feels relaxing. Like, I can calm down. Even just thinking about it now, I'm like calming down from having kind of like a migraine while I record this. Not very mindful of me, but I digress. So, right, you make a routine and it kind of like will stop and turn away from my phone, and I'll like meditate a bit and I'll play some frequencies or ambient music. It's just what makes me feel present, and I find myself going into a deep sleep. But to do all of this, I practice habit stacking too, which is like what I describe as happens when you figure out those redirecting priorities. Do you want to make sure you're well rested? How can you map that out in accordance to your lifestyle? Like, what is the sequence of events that gets me to rest? Making those habits. And you don't need to plan all of your days out or like all of the things you do, but just being more conscious of it and finding those connections in your habits that you want to have, and making sure you leave time so that they become main priorities. I'm a little bit more of a stickler for structure, so having a consistent routine has turned into like a force of habit for me. So much so that even just like sticking to my schedule has shaken me out of a really busy mind and low mood so many times. It's a homeostasis for my body. I feel like a neutral, and I expect to come back to it like every day. So if I'm not in a good place mentally, I'll notice pretty easily before bed during this hour because it's difficult to feel motivated or present throughout the day, and it just like feels like sitting in like a warm bath. My third practice is meditation in a more non-traditional sense. I believe in meditation, and I totally believe in like an intense state of focus and consciousness, but kind of like not connecting it to any like bigger idea. I just kind of connect it to not letting anything outside of my mind penetrate like that moment. So I have many different ways I meditate. Sometimes I'll lock into one of my daily routines, like cooking or showering or my skincare, and I'll just kind of focus like all my attention on the task and think about like the connection it has to my body and my mind. Like when I cook, how can like it feel sacred, like a ritual, and I'm just nurturing my body. I need food. I'm tuning into my senses. And another example in a less traditional sense is dancing and listening to music. I've like always like really felt connected to music. I find it like, I don't know, feels super just trance like. I find like I'll just be like so present, so in tune with my body, and just doesn't even matter who's around me. I'll just be like totally in my dancing like mode, and it's so meditating for me. And I've recently tried raving, and it was like super fun, and I loved it. I love the environment of raves. I went to my first one like completely sober and just like danced all night, and it was so amazing, and I felt like such a natural high. And I also like usually go to more like low key things because I'm just not huge into the scene. So like finding little things like that, concerts, also live music, like listening to my friends who play their instruments, like it just, I melt. It's so good. And just, I'll have stressful weeks where like all I want to do is dance or like listen to my friends play and not think about my responsibilities. And it's truly like an amazing cope. And yeah, it's like meditation doesn't need to be this silent practice. You can be in like a loud, busy place. It's truly dependent on what your body and mind responds to best. My fourth best practice is getting up and moving. I have to reference back to like initial stages of me moving out on my own, because in like my lowest, most stagnant places physically, I would bed rot. Like I'm all for a nice nap and day lounging, but I was like not doing that. I was rotting for sure. Like I was just, it's something I really notice even now after I've built strong copes of periods of time where it's just so hard to feel motivated to do anything physical because of how paralyzing my thoughts are. So moving around, doing yoga, going for a run or a walk, just like the act of picking yourself up and moving, it just aids my mental health significantly. Now I usually don't jump in, like I don't jump the gun like on a negative emotion or a mood if I realize I haven't really like moved around much throughout the day. So I will acknowledge, I feel bad, I feel low. Like, let me try to move as much as I can. Within this, I've pursued a fitness journey, and I have a gym routine. It's like very adult of me, I know. It's like another weapon I have against any depressive and anxious periods. I think knowing like how my body is in like a healthy and happy environment or like in a focused one is just makes me feel like so much more discernment for my moods and my body state when I am in like a low mood, because I know what it is to be like healthy and like a good mindset. My last and final cope, and arguably the most difficult and important one, is opening up to your network and community when you need emotional support. I have no idea how many times I spent the entire week living in my repetitive and dooming thoughts, like only to be met with close friends and share a bit about like what I'm going through. I have so many like instances of just like I just need to be around someone I care about and love and just like tell you like the shit that's going on in my life, because like what is life if it isn't to connect, if it's not to be with one another in community? Like I find that completely changes my mood, and I feel like it encourages my friends to be raw and honest as well. Like I wasn't always surrounded by people who just were super vulnerable and willing to share. Like I really practice when I'm preaching I really like worked on being vulnerable, on being comfortable with sharing things, even though like sometimes when I'm in the thick of it, I might not immediately think to do it. But now I like make a conscious effort. Like I need to talk to somebody. I need to open up. I need to like not be alone in what I'm going through. And yeah, it's just like I really identify with it, and just being transparent about struggling through things. Like there's a stigma around mental health, and I find it envelops my mind sometimes when I have a busy schedule to just shut myself out. So, you know, how can you show up for people if you can't show up for yourself? And like, I have no idea how many times like throughout my life I felt so like alone or lonely, and I realized like, I wasn't even making an attempt to bridge any kind of connection with anyone. And you can't be, if you want to be less lonely, you have to be like an encourager of connection as well. Like if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. Like all these kind of practices I take up, I think it just forms deeper bonds. And I feel like the difference in a tone of a relationship with somebody like opens completely when you just stop like giving so much shits about what somebody might or might not like about you or want to hear from you. Let people be disappointed. Let them not like you. Let them question like your motives in your world. Like you're a human being. Be a human. Be a little bit more human by sharing how you feel and what you're going through. Within this, like I obviously am a labor organizer, and that's its own skill, but how does it connect? It's an emotionally demanding role, honestly. It takes up so much sometimes. So I encourage you to find your copes and routines and habits and your community to confide in, to grow with, and to establish a safe space in. You know, I want all my viewers to know the Secret Diary is its space. I'm currently working on a Discord server so we can interact more and share experiences. I believe that to be a good organizer, to be involved in work that can be taxing, we have to set ourselves up for success. And I know these first few episodes might not seem super labor organizing specific, but this podcast is just as much personal as it is educational, and like less, it's more analytical and informational in times, but I want you to have references to go back to when you're, easing into growing pains, whether it be like you're a labor organizer or you're just like you're working. We work. You need to carry this stuff with you regardless. So much like toxic workplace stuff happens, like even if you're not looking to organize, but I encourage you to. Um, we're fighting for worker rights. We're fighting for a free Palestine and an overall better world that prioritizes dignity and respect in all various systems and structures. We're working to change and transcend and be a difference. And I want to encourage you to do that, in your day to day life, not just through social justice and just you're a part of society, you're a part of culture, whether you want to believe it or not, whether you want to participate or not, whether you think like you have an excuse to not participate or not. I don't care. Take this with a grain of salt, or wholly rock it all the way over. I'm Arianna Ayala, but I think I'm gonna go by Ari on here. Just it feels more personal, and not to encourage any kind of like parasocial relationship, please and thank you. I am a safe space, but I'm also completely on the internet to online right now. Connect with the people in your life. Find people through here to connect with, closely. I do my best to maintain a responsibility and a sense of, social awareness. So remember to follow the show and to share this episode if you enjoyed it. This is only the beginning of an amazing passion project I have, so please leave any suggestions and questions down in the comments or shoot me a message on our Instagram at socialdiary.socials. Subscribe, follow, turn on notifications so you know every time that there's a new episode. It probably won't be super frequent just because I have a lot of stuff going on, trying to focus on the people in my life and, kind of locking in with them. But I'll see you guys later. Keep fighting the good fight and, do something that you really want to do today and acknowledge how you feel. All right.